Ancient Egypt was a land obsessed with eternity, but it was also a land deeply afraid of disturbance. Tombs were not simply graves. They were sealed worlds, built to protect the dead from time, decay, and the living. To enter a tomb without permission was not just theft, it was an attack on cosmic order itself. From the moment a tomb was sealed, it was believed to fall under divine protection. Words carved into stone were not decoration. They were warnings, promises, threats. Egyptians believed that spoken or written words carried power, even centuries later. A curse did not need to be spoken aloud. The stone itself would remember. Many tombs carried inscriptions meant to terrify intruders. They warned of sickness, madness, blindness, or sudden death. Some promised that the crocodile, the snake, or the desert itself would rise against the violator. These were not metaphors. In a world where gods interfered daily in human life, such punishments were expected to be real. The fear was not irrational. Tomb robbery was common even in ancient times. Gold, jewelry, and sacred objects tempted the desperate. But robbing a tomb meant more than stealing wealth. It meant destroying a soul's chance at eternal life. A damaged body or stolen amulet could doom the dead forever. This is why curses targeted not only the body of the thief, but their name, memory, and future. To erase someone's name was to erase their existence. Some curses promised that the criminal would be forgotten, denied burial, and wander eternally without rest. For an Egyptian, this was worse than death. Priests reinforced these fears. They taught that spirits could linger, watching over their tombs. An angered soul could bring illness, crop failure, or family tragedy upon generations of intruders. The dead were not passive. They could act. Even officials tasked with tomb maintenance feared lingering too long. Lamps were kept lit, rituals spoken, and offerings made to calm the spirit inside.
Silence inside a tomb was not peace. It was vigilance. Centuries later, when archaeologists began opening tombs, ancient fears resurfaced. Sudden deaths, strange illnesses, and accidents fueled rumors that the old curses still worked. The tomb of Tutankhamun became the most famous example, but it was not unique. Newspapers revived ancient warnings, turning myth into global panic. But the truth is more complex. Egyptian curses were psychological weapons as much as spiritual ones. They were designed to protect eternity by terrifying the present. Fear was the final wall when stone failed. And yet, for the ancient Egyptians, these curses were not superstition. They were law, magic, and justice combined. A final defense against anyone who dared to disturb the dead. The fear surrounding cursed tombs influenced every stage of burial. Craftsmen, priests, and laborers all understood that a single mistake could endanger not only the deceased, but themselves. Each stone, each seal, each inscription was placed with precision, reinforced by ritual, and protected by the authority of the gods. Mistakes were punished swiftly, sometimes by human law, sometimes by divine retribution, or so the Egyptians believed. The tomb itself was a complex maze, designed to confuse intruders. False passages, hidden chambers, and secret doors were common. Some tombs contained traps, but more often the traps were symbolic. A thief who entered would feel lost, fearful, and anxious, and in that state, they were more likely to abandon their attempt. The psychological effect was as important as the physical defenses. Curse inscriptions became more elaborate over time. Some detailed gruesome fates, plagues that would strike entire families, violent deaths in the desert, or attacks by wild animals. Others promised spiritual consequences, that the soul of the intruder would wander eternally, denied the afterlife, never to find rest. Every curse reminded the living that disturbing the dead was an attack on Ma'at, the divine order of the universe. Even ordinary Egyptians were cautious. Stories of cursed tombs circulated widely. Peasants avoided old burial grounds. Officials ensured proper respect when entering tombs, always bringing offerings and reciting protective spells. Fear of angered spirits was not a tale for entertainment. It governed behavior. People believed that the dead could influence crops, weather, and fortune. The line between life and death was permeable. For pharaohs and nobles, tombs were investments in eternity. Their wealth, status, and accomplishments were preserved within stone walls. But the curses ensured that only those who respected the sacred order could access them. The treasures inside were not just for display. They were part of the deceased's eternal needs. Stealing them could condemn the thief to an eternity of suffering. Even for archaeologists, centuries later, these tombs remained intimidating. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, despite meticulous planning, sparked rumors of curses because of the sudden deaths and illnesses surrounding some who entered. Modern science explains much of this, but the fear remains compelling because it reflects the ancient Egyptians' understanding of the world, that the boundary between life and death was controlled, sacred, and dangerous. Curses also reflected social control. They warned not only outsiders, but also those within society. Priests, officials, and family members were reminded that disrupting ritual or greed could have consequences. The dead were allies of order, ensuring that the living respected both tradition and divine law. In the end, cursed tombs were far more than superstition. They were a sophisticated system of protection, combining psychology, ritual, and belief. They ensured that the dead were not forgotten, their bodies preserved, and their souls secure. Every curse, every inscription, every trap was a statement. The dead were not powerless, and the living would pay for disrespect. The story of cursed tombs teaches us that for the ancient Egyptians, death was never simple. It was dangerous, sacred, and deeply intertwined with life. Those who prepared properly could hope for eternity. Those who failed, or who dared to disturb what was sacred, faced consequences that reached beyond the grave. In a land obsessed with immortality, curses were the ultimate warning. Eternity belongs only to those who respect it. The power of cursed tombs went far beyond warnings on stone. Ancient Egyptians believed that the spirits of the dead were aware, conscious, and capable of action. A pharaoh's tomb was not just a resting place, it was a living domain. The soul inside watched, judged, and protected. This belief meant that the dead were not passive victims of time. They were active participants in maintaining cosmic order. Even the smallest tombs carried protections. Priests placed miniature figurines, amulets, and magical symbols within every chamber. These were not decorative, they were sentinels. Some represented guardians, others spoke spells intended to confuse or strike intruders. A thief might think he had taken a trinket or opened an empty room, but these objects were carefully placed to control fate,
ensuring that no one disturbed the peace of the tomb without consequence. Fear extended to the families of tomb robbers. If a curse claimed a life, it was believed that the sinner's descendants might also suffer. Crops could fail, animals die, and illness strike those associated with the offender. This intergenerational fear reinforced respect for the dead and ensured that even those with ill intent thought twice before entering a tomb. In a society where divine law governed every aspect of life, breaking the rules of the dead was akin to breaking the universe itself. Even the architecture of tombs was designed to amplify terror. Narrow corridors created shadows that shifted with torches. Small chambers forced intruders to crawl or bend, and false doors made the tomb seem endless. These features were not only practical, but psychological. A thief entering such a space felt vulnerability, isolation, and fear, emotions that could be fatal in themselves. The ancient Egyptians understood that fear could be as powerful as physical punishment. Curses also acted as social equalizers. No matter how powerful a thief might be, no one could ignore the spiritual law embedded in these warnings. Even priests and nobles were cautious when entering tombs, knowing that disrespect could result in divine punishment. The living were reminded that the dead had authority, and that life without respect for the dead could lead to ruin. Stories of cursed tombs traveled far. Merchants, travelers, and storytellers spread tales of sudden death, illness, and misfortune following the desecration of graves. These stories reinforced societal order and elevated the tombs beyond mere physical structures. They became moral lessons: respect the dead, honor tradition, and beware the unseen consequences of greed. Over time, the concept of curses evolved. Some became more elaborate, with specific threats tailored to the sin of the intruder. Others incorporated divine imagery: Anubis with his jackal head, the serpent guarding treasures, and Osiris himself watching every step. The combination of imagery, text, and ritual made the tomb a fortress not only of stone, but of belief, an invisible barrier that extended centuries beyond death. Even today, cursed tombs captivate the imagination. Modern archaeologists and explorers may approach them with science, yet the stories remain powerful. They remind us that the ancient Egyptians viewed death as a continuation of life, where the boundary between the living and the dead was permeable, sacred, and dangerous. They also teach that fear, carefully designed and ritualized, was as important as gold or architecture in preserving eternity. In the end, the cursed tombs of ancient Egypt were more than superstition. They were a reflection of a civilization obsessed with survival beyond death. They show a society where mortality was ever present, and respect for the dead was not optional. Every warning, every trap, every inscription was a statement. Life is temporary. Death is inevitable. But eternity can be protected, if only the living honor the sacred law. The legacy of these tombs is eternal. They remind us that for the ancient Egyptians, death was never a simple end. It was a complex, dangerous, and highly controlled journey. And for those who dared to disturb what had been consecrated, the consequences were more than material. They were spiritual, social, and eternal.